The Persians do not enter the stage of history with a loud introduction. In fact, the interesting part is that for a long time, no one takes them seriously. This people, living on the Iranian plateau and leading a nomadic life in mountainous regions, seems like a small community overshadowed by great powers such as the Medes, Babylonians, and Lydians. But history sometimes accumulates things in the quietest corners, and the Persians are preparing to step onto the stage at just such a moment. Because from among this people, one of the rare leaders who conquered the world yet was not hated, will be born. At the center of this story is a name, Cyrus, a child about whom prophecies were made even when he was a baby, associated with dreams, and even wanted to be killed. Those who wanted to eliminate him were not afraid without reason, because when Cyrus grows up, he will not only take lands, but he will also fundamentally change the understanding of empire as we know it. But before those days arrive, the Persians are under the rule of the Median kingdom, and no one thinks they will one day become masters, until Cyrus rebels against the king of the Medes. Here, the first thing that separates the Persians from other peoples appears, their understanding of conquest. Instead of destroying his enemies, Cyrus prefers to win them over. He does not burn cities, does not destroy temples, and does not interfere with people's beliefs. Therefore, many cities open their gates without fighting as he advances. For the people, a new ruler has arrived, but this ruler respects the existing order instead of destroying it. This approach quickly turns the Persians into an unstoppable power, and then a very critical moment occurs in history. The richest state of that period, Lydia, the land of the legendary King Cyrus, becomes the target of the Persians. This kingdom, trusting its army famous for its gold, underestimates Cyrus. But the result is something no one expects. Lydia falls. Then comes Babylon. Moreover, Babylon falls into the hands of the Persians without experiencing a single great destruction. At that moment, the Persians are no longer just a people, but an empire that shapes the fate of the world. But the real question is this: how did the Persians manage to keep together people with so many different languages, religions, and cultures? Why were there so few rebellions in the lands they conquered? And after Cyrus, could this order really continue? Because founding an empire may be difficult, but keeping it standing is much more difficult. And the real test of the Persians will begin exactly here. The order established by Cyrus is remembered not only for the wars he won, but also for the legacy he left behind. When he dies, the Persian Empire has spread across a vast geography. But the real issue is this: how will such a large territory be governed? Here, the real difference that separates the Persians from other empires appears. Instead of ruling everything by suffocating control from a single center, they learn to manage through control and balance. And for its time, this is an incredibly intelligent system. The Persians divide the empire into regions called satrapies. Each region has a governor, but these governors do not possess unlimited power. Financial affairs, military power, and justice are handled by different people. In other words, it is deliberately prevented that one person dominates everything, because the Persians know very well that power corrupts. Thanks to this system, rebellions are detected early, and the center establishes real supervision over the provinces. No other empire of that time does this so consciously. There is also the matter of roads. The Persians do not only conquer lands, they connect those lands to each other. The royal road, stretching thousands of kilometers, allows news and orders to reach the farthest corners of the empire within days. Messengers constantly change horses and move forward day and night. This speed gives the Persians time, and time is as valuable for empires as armies. A rebellion is suppressed before it fully begins. A threat is eliminated before it grows. In this period, the Persian king is no longer just a warrior. He is the king of kings. Palaces grow larger and ceremonies become magnificent. But interestingly, this magnificence creates a sense of order rather than fear. The peoples living under Persian rule speak their own languages, worship their own gods, and maintain their traditions as long as they pay their taxes. For this reason, Persian rule means stability rather than destruction for many peoples. But like every system, this order also has its limits. As the empire grows, cracks begin to appear in regions far from the center. Satraps grow stronger and palace intrigues increase. Kings are no longer as simple as they once were. And for the Persians, the real danger will be this slow internal change rather than enemies coming from outside. Because history shows us again and again that what destroys an empire is often not the sword, but a disturbed balance. The Persian Empire has now become a power talked about not only in the East, but throughout the entire world. And after Cyrus, perhaps the most ambitious Persian king takes the throne, Darius. When he ascends the throne, he faces a great legacy, but also enormous problems. Because the empire is boiling from within, rebellions break out. Satraps begin to act independently. Darius' first task is not conquest, but restoring order. Darius almost rebuilds the Persian state. He clarifies the tax system, establishes a standardized currency for the first time, and records who must pay what. Although this disturbs some peoples, the disappearance of uncertainty revives trade. A merchant selling goods in Persian lands now knows what to expect in each city. This keeps the empire standing not only militarily, but also economically. For the Persians, power exists not only in the army, but also in the market and on the road. But Darius's gaze looks even farther. The eastern borders are secured, and Egypt in the south is under control. Now, the turn comes to the west, where there are small but stubborn cities, the Greek city-states. For the Persians, these cities do not initially appear to be a great threat. They are scattered and constantly quarrel among themselves. But these underestimated cities will later cause serious trouble for the Persians. When the first contacts begin, Persian armies encounter a resistance they are not used to. Soldiers, few in number but disciplined, do not step back while defending their lands. For the Persians, this is a new situation, because most cities had either surrendered or collapsed quickly before them. Here, however, the matter is not only war. A battle of will has begun. For the first time, East and West face each other so clearly. And for the Persians, this confrontation is not only a military issue, because in the Greek world, the Persians begin to be seen not as a ruling power, but as the other. Stories are written, narratives are created, and hostility gains a cultural dimension. This perception prepares the ground for the great wars that will come later. The Persians are still very powerful, but now they face not only armies, but also a world view forming against them. And this is an enemy far more difficult to defeat with a sword. For the Persians, the Greek world is no longer a simple border issue. It turns into a matter of making the power of the empire accepted by the whole world. After Darius, Xerxes ascends the throne and does not want to leave this unfinished. He is determined to complete what his father began. He believes that the Greek cities must recognize Persian authority and prepares for one of the largest campaigns in history. The numbers may be exaggerated, but the truth is this. An army larger than anything seen before moves toward the west. This march itself is a display of power. Straits are crossed, bridges are built, and roads are opened. However, such a great power also has a weakness: slowness. And the Greeks use this very well. They try to stop the Persian army in narrow passes and difficult terrain. What happens at Thermopylae is not a military disaster for the Persians, but it creates a huge psychological impact. Because for the first time, the Persian army appears to have been stopped before the eyes of the whole world by the resistance of only a handful of soldiers. Then comes Athens. The city has been evacuated, but the Persians still capture it. Temples burn and sacred places are damaged. This moment makes hatred toward the Persians permanent in the Greek world. Yet for the Persians, this is simply the punishment of a rebellion. Both sides attach completely different meanings to the same event, and history is often shaped by whoever tells it. At sea, things do not go as the Persians want. What happens at Salamis shows how a huge empire can struggle against smaller ships. The crowded fleet loses its advantage in narrow waters. Xerxes does not completely lose the war, but the initiative passes to the Greeks. From this point on, each campaign gradually begins to lose its meaning. And perhaps the most important thing is this: the Persians are not completely defeated militarily in these wars, but they lose the story. The Western world begins to define itself through a victory won against the Persians. The Persians are still a vast empire. They are still rich and still powerful, but they no longer appear unstoppable. After the Greek campaigns, the Persian Empire does not collapse immediately, but it begins to weaken from within. Kings grow distant in their palaces, intrigues increase, satraps turn into small kings in their own regions. The center still appears strong, but the sense of control slowly disappears. At this moment, an unexpected power appears on the stage: Macedonia. At its head is a young, ambitious, and unstoppable man, Alexander the Great. At first, the Persians do not take him seriously, but what Alexander does is a kind of war the Persians are not used to. Fast, bold attacks aimed directly at the heart. Battles are lost and cities fall. Yet interestingly, the Persian system does not completely disappear. Alexander adopts the Persian style of governance, continues the court traditions, and even begins to behave like a Persian. This shows something important. The Persians may have been defeated militarily, but the system they built was strong enough to transform even the victor. An empire has fallen, but the market left behind has not disappeared. And perhaps the greatest legacy of the Persians lies here. They became one of the first empires to grow, not by conquering alone, but by governing. They showed that different peoples could live together. They built a power based on law, order, and tolerance. Today, at the foundation of many concepts we call the modern state, there is the Persian mind, even if we are not aware of it. The Persians lost, but the world learned a great deal from them. And history sometimes tells the story of those who quietly shaped even the greatest victors a little later.